Good morning, YouTubers. It's the day after yesterday. Anyway, February 27th, 2019. To give you the arc of the last few months, I went to a conference called the Secret Knowledge Conference. Now, it wasn't really secret. It's kind of a ploy to get people in the door to call something secret. Everyone wants to know what the secret is. It was really about artists, musicians, creatives, as we call them here in Portland, often squeezed by high rents, leaving or finding another place to set up. It's a common pattern that you get a thriving little subculture of people taking high risk in their lifestyle, and that attracts onlookers, people who want to be a part of the scene, and they have money and they come in and they want to be cool, right? So that forces the cool people to leave because they didn't have the money to begin with. So that's going on in Portland a lot. What I thought I would do here, well, anyway, after that Secret Knowledge Conference, I, as someone who takes risks and lives on the edge, said, gee, I better make some more videos because I need to get the word out there. So I went on a rampage of creating videos, and this has gotten to be more of a habit. I see a lot of YouTubers doing this, kind of keeping a diary online or journal, and that's kind of the mode I'm in somewhat. I've gotten to where I like to show pictures and talk at the same time. And what I've been talking about, like in my last video, is the topic of globalism. And I was saying, it's not the stereotype. For one thing, it could involve a lot more nations than we have now, some of which don't have much of a footprint in terms of large contiguous landmass. Like our idea of a country, right, it's topologically pretty simple. It's got a border around it, and but then if you factor in embassies and military bases and things like that, sovereignty, it's not as simple as it first seems. It's not just a jigsaw puzzle. For example, internal to the territorial United States, we have a lot of subnations, so-called tribal sovereignties, you could call them. These were areas set aside for native peoples by treaty, and their sovereignty is a little bit different, at least, from that of the United States in terms of laws, and it's complicated, right? The whole story is very complicated. So I'm saying the nation state thing is very complicated, but usually if you have a bunch of separate regions that aren't connected physically, geographically, they're not considered part of the same nation. Now, doesn't Denmark claim Greenland or something? Isn't Greenland part of Denmark? It's much bigger than Denmark. So if that's the case, then maybe we should be calling Greenland Denmark on the maps and stuff. So maps are a big part of it. The Russians and the Japanese have some islands. How do we want to color code all this stuff? And I think the fight over color coding, that goes on. It's kind of like gerrymandering and so on. People will play these games, but we're not all at the same time period. That's the thing. There are Russians and Americans right now working in an international space station environment. They're used to working together. It's not a problem. We're humans, we're cosmonauts, we're astronauts, we're engineers, we're doing our jobs and so forth. And then you have Cold Warriors still, large leftover vets from that war who are still running things in D.C. in large degree, running things at least on paper. And, their world is very different. Russia's a huge enemy of the United States, and any idea of high voltage connections across the Bering Strait, whatever, that kind of science fiction as a genre is just a threat to the whole Cold War mindset. Like, even though we say the Cold War is over, it's got to be on the terms that America won. At least that's one that they won, right? And now America is the only superpower. Stuff like that. If you don't quite buy that narrative, then what narrative do you buy? Suddenly you're suspect. Now, the Bucky Fuller narrative, you can read that in Critical Path, but he's looking at kind of a big picture evolution of the human species, and he's thinking, we're getting better at technology, that's obvious, but we're also getting better at destroying each other, that's obvious too. And one of the biggest industries on the planet, as we're discussing on Facebook this morning, is killing of people. That's like a big industry. I don't know where it ranks if we wanted to do statistics. Like, is killing people bigger or smaller than, gosh, where would it fit? Maybe certainly bigger than all the art museums, and I would say all of archaeology, all of studying of antiquity, all explorations of the Titanic, everything that we do to study our own history, I would say is dwarfed by the killing industry, which has gotten very efficient as well in terms of technology. So the question, I bring that up in other videos, is what's going to win out? Our tendency to kill each other off, or as a species, are we going to reach greater lower risk? Like if we were aliens who ran an insurance company, I would say the humans would have to pay a pretty high premium at this point because of how they behave. But I wanted to point out that we're not all living in the same time frame. Like, what's the electrical grid like between what we call Iran and Iraq? In other words, does some of that nuclear power from the Iranian grid go into the Iraqi grid? And where are the hookups? This is the kind of thing I've studied and I ask about, and I'm into electrical grids, but why am I one of the few? And are the only people who care about electrical grids in some kind of top secret job or something? Because that's just stupid. Why aren't we in high school studying electrical grids? We're studying pipelines. It's part of the global infrastructure. So what does the grid look like? Forget about what it might look like and all the plans. Just what does it look like today? And I would flip through all the channels back here in 2019. Nothing, 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 nothing. Websites, a little bit. It's like we'll talk about it if you go to the website and really dig. You can go to the library and find this stuff. So it's not like it's totally classified, top secret information. That's what I'm saying. Any journalist or newspaper could be studying this issue, but they don't like to break the mold and go off on topics of their own devising, such as the concentric hierarchy and the whole number of volumes that I have stacked up here. 1, 4, 6, and 3. Now, if you want a nice edge length to go with that, you're going to have to learn a little bit of synergetics, and see, that's what journalists don't want to do. It's easier to just forget about Fuller as a crackpot and hopelessly idealistic, some kind of utopian dreamer, and just tune it out. Forget about all this stuff that streamlines geometry. We don't want to do that. It's like, oh, you mean we could actually walk our own talk and improve our education system with this material? Well, that's not what we want to complain. We want to whine about how bad education is, but do you want your kids to actually learn what I'm showing here on the screen? Do you want them to know about electrical grids and polyhedrons and Euler's equation, stuff like that? Well, are you demanding it? Are you like, I'm not going to go to school again until they get their act together? Like, what is it that you're doing to make sure this material gets out there? I would say, from my angle, it doesn't look like there's, a huge rush. It looks pretty lazy, pretty relaxed, in kind of an unfortunate way. A lot of people trying to sound like they're trying to save the world, but how do we save the world, and why aren't we like investing in infrastructure the way we need to? Keep talking about it, never do it. Now, I claim that this kind of curriculum materials that I'm working is a key ingredient, and to just keep bleeping over it day after day is not to anyone's real benefit, except people who can't stand change. But what's life if not change, right? So Have a good one. Just wanted to give my morning talk. Had a good time. Oh, and I did get to connect with those kids in Texas, it turned out. I've been saying Illinois, but it's actually this morning we went through some. You guys are out there. Thanks for actually, for those few of you who are interested in the future, we're doing good work. Talk to you later.